Hello and welcome back to Random Vids. So, here we go again. So, about 4 years ago, I started the very first ranking a series where I ranked every single episode from the 101 Dalmatians TV show, or as it's called, the series. So, I did that about, 4 years ago, springtime of 2021. That's about 4 years ago. And for it being some of my first ranking videos of all time, I mean, I think they're fine, but I feel like they could definitely use a major update. There's a few problems with it. Number one is that obviously some of my opinions have changed on episodes. Like, some are worse or better than I originally thought. Another one is I had a script that I written. Okay, that just made my job just 100 times more harder. So I don't know why I did a script for when I was ranking the episodes originally. But for this one, obviously, no script. And there was a few episodes I didn't even add due to me never seeing them before. So we're definitely putting those ones on the list as well. So with all that said and done, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoy this remaster of ranking every single episode from 101 Dalmatians this series. And man, it's gonna be a long video, that's for sure. And what's funny is that one of the original ones actually got over 1,000 views, which is crazy. So it's time to remaster that. Time to make it a little more modern. So with that, let's get to my absolute least favorite episode. Here we go. Number 104, Splishing and Splashing. Yep, I still agree with myself. I do not like this episode at all. So what happens, you may ask? So the pups go swimming. The goose gets grumpy, and that's it. That's literally the whole story. And then I really hate these type of cliche episodes where we all know the one who we really don't like in the episode, yet the ones that we're rooting for gets punished. Like, what? What kind of story is that? It's a okay. Horrible is a strong word. It is a bad episode, that is for sure. And Goose is one of the absolute worst characters of the show as well, so that doesn't make it any better. Basically, she's complaining that the pups are swimming in a pond, and this is apparently a problem? I don't know. She ends up tattletaling, gets the pups in trouble, and now they can't swim unless they apologize. Wow, this is a train wreck of an episode. I hate it. I think it's stupid. And the plot just goes nowhere, and by the end of the episode, it's like nothing ever happened. So, what's the point of this garbage episode? Yeah, it's bad. I don't need to say anything. We all know it's a bad episode. We all know I don't like it. It's horrible. It's easily my least favorite episode of the series, so nothing else I have to say here. Number 103, Citizen K9. Oh boy, this one is another one of these episodes that I really didn't like back in the day, and I still agree with myself. So, apparently there's this pig called Ed Pig. He is the mayor of the farm. And I don't know what happened. I think he just forgot his morning cup of coffee. But today he's in a very grouchy mood. And he ends up bothering literally every single animal. So they get tired of him and they vote for Lucky to be the new mayor. But that doesn't end up working out well. And it ends up Ed Pig ends up being the mayor again. It's just such a dumb episode, almost kind of like Splishing and Splashing in a way, where basically the villain of the episode just wins. And it isn't a fun seeing Cruella win every once in a while. No, it's one of those instances where the spoiled bratty character wins, and we're not here for that. And honestly, Ed Pig is another one of my least favorite characters in the show. A lot of his episodes are just very weak, and I just feel like he's just such an annoying character. And it doesn't help that he spoils his daughter, Dumpling, either. And she's another very annoying character of the show as well. So they end up having just some of the absolute weakest episodes of the series. And this one is just, oh, it's horrible. It's bad. I don't need to say anything else. Let's move on. Number 102, The Goodbye Chick. So in this episode, Spot's mom, Cornelia, is upset with Spot because she's been hanging out with the pups too much, and now Spot is starting to act like a dog, and to the point that she even thinks that she's a dog. Then Cornelius is fed up with it and wants Spot to act like a chicken again. But Spot ends up hanging out with the pups, that doesn't work, and then she ends up just running away at the end. another one of these just very odd episodes. I just feel like it doesn't really need to exist. And I remember watching it way back when and just finding it just super bland. And it's another one of those ones that is just like, I don't know, it's bad. I don't really think it should have been as special either. Not even Cruella can make this episode better. Number 101, Love 'em and Flee 'em. Ooh, so this is an interesting episode. Actually, not really, if it's this low on the list. So, we have another one of these characters named Mooch. Mooch is the bully of the series, and he usually bullies Lucky or Rolly, whoever he can get his hands on, or paws, whatever. So this episode, I guess Two-Tone is going on a date with Lucky. I don't know. I don't remember how this plot goes. I just remember it's just a lot of Mooch bullying Lucky and a bunch of just stupid shenanigan situations. This ain't the first time we'll see this type of episode as well. Just an episode where Mooch is just plain old bully. Yeah, it's a pretty boring one. It's just basically one of those episodes where someone gets tortured for the whole episode, and that's about it. It's just as dumb as those Squidward torture episodes from SpongeBob. Number 100, Conehead. So, basically, it's Love 'em and Flee 'em 2.0. Lucky gets a cone on, and everyone tortures him. It's one of the most stupidest episodes ever, just because it's nothing that fun. And everyone just laughs at Lucky for having a cone on. Wow, what friends. Yeah, this is easily one of the absolute weakest episodes of the series. And it's no point making literally a clone of one of the absolute worst episodes. Ugh, this one's bad. Horrible. Let's move on. Also, forgot to mention, the Roger scenes are actually kind of funny. That's literally the only reason why it's better than Love 'em and Flee 'em, but still a bad episode. Number 99, On the Lam. We've gotten to the episodes where we have just some sort of random animal just be the center of attention. And honestly, I feel like any episode that stars an animal that isn't a pup, it's automatically going to be just 100 times worse. Just because the animal they usually end up bringing into the episode is just extremely boring. So we have a lot of these type of episodes coming up, so just prepare. So, On the Lam, number 99. Extremely boring. I don't like it at all. Number 98, He Followed Me Home. Oh, but here's another animal, this time an elephant. An elephant accidentally sneaks into the Deerly farm, makes friends with Rolly, and they try to hide it from Cruella. And that's basically the episode. The only reason why it's a little better than On the Lam is just because there's funny Cruella scenes. Other than that, it's another bad episode. Number 97, Lobster Tale. Oh look, here we go again with another animal episode, this time a lobster. Big whoop. Because I'm totally here to watch lobsters, right? That's definitely what I came to watch the series for. Although this episode does have a really funny Cruella moment. Number 96, Horse and Jasper's Big Career Move. Oh, would you look at that, it's a flashback episode. And there's nothing to describe because it's a flashback episode. And normally I don't mind these type of episodes in TV shows, but they just did it so bland in this episode, and it's a shame because it's Jasper and Horse. They could really have some really good episodes. Unfortunately, the one and only episode they star in is a flashback episode, and it's one of the most boring of the show. Number 95, Humanitarian of the Year. Oh look, it's another flashback episode, except this time it's a little more interesting just because it's more than just showing Jasper and Horse throughout the whole episode. Still boring as heck though. Number 94, Easy on the Lies. Ooh, this is another one of those cliche episodes that I've definitely seen before. Somebody lies and then they have to pay for it. I've seen it millions of times in other TV shows, and it's another one of my least favorite cliches. And it's just so dumb. And especially since it's too Rolly, one of the absolute best characters of the show too. Eek. Yeah, it's dumb, and I just think it's downright boring too, so it's nothing special. Number 93, It's a Swamp Thing. Basically, Easy on the Lies, just without the torturing Rolly. And that's it. There's nothing else to this episode. And honestly, at this point, I'm really starting to get tired of all these side characters who aren't dogs or humans. Because, literally, and if it's another animal that isn't a dog, then it's just really boring, honestly. And they have way too many side characters, I think, and like I said, they're all just extremely boring. So, yeah, that's that, I guess. Basically the same episode as Easy on the Lies, just without the torturing, which makes it slightly better, but still extremely boring. Number 92, Chow About That. Hey, would you like to watch an episode where literally nothing happens? I know, I do too. Actually, just kidding, not really. Basically, the pups missed lunch, so they try to sneak into the Chow Tower. And that's it. That's all they do. And I hope you enjoy that for the whole episode, because there's nothing else to it. It's, once again, extremely boring. Number 91, Channels. Well, hey, look, it's another episode where basically nothing happens. So the pups are out doing whatever they're doing, and meanwhile, literally every other farm animal is switching the channels, and basically every channel has the pups in it. So, okay. I think it's a really boring episode. Once again, like Chow About That, nothing really happens. Nothing interesting, at least. So, it's, once again, down here at the bottom of the list. Number 90, My Fair Chicken. Oh, well, would you look at this? It's another boring Spot episode. What is it with the Spot episodes just being pretty boring? I don't know, but a lot of them are just dumb. And this one is almost kind of like The Goodbye Chick in a way, except I think it's done a lot better. But by a lot better, it's basically just more boring, opposed to it actually just being downright bad. It's literally the same story. Cornelius wants Spot to act more like a chicken. But at least, towards the end of the episode, Spot actually proves that being a chicken, or acting like a dog, whatever, is worth the while when Jasper and Horace literally wrecked the chicken party and tried to take them all. So, there is some interesting things about this episode, I guess. Better than The Goodbye Chick for sure, but still extremely boring. Number 89, Spot's Fairy God Chicken. And we have another Spot Center of Attention episode. This time she wants to be a dog. Literally a dog. So she ends up getting turned into a dog. Oof, okay. And that's basically the plot of the story, and then she turns back to a chicken in the end. Plus seeing Spot as a chicken, or as a dog, is just very... I don't even know. I don't have words for it. Number 88, High Price of Fame. You know, we're just never going to move past Spot episodes, are we? Well, this time it's basically just the same story as Spot's Fairy God Chicken without the creepy chicken turning into a dog type thing. It's still another boring episode, and it's almost kind of like Love 'Em and Flee 'Em actually in a way too, where someone gets tortured, or Easy on the Lies, whatever one you want to reference. And it's basically just everyone laughing at Spot because she's very clumsy. Another very just bland episode. Number 87, Sharuzel Watch. So in this episode, Corella's pet Scorch pretends to be a Sharuzel. So then I really don't remember. A lot of the Corella plots have to do with her trying to take over the farm. So it does kind of get a little samey at times, and sometimes I really forget what episodes are about her taking over the farm and whatever is different. And this just happens to be one of the absolute just weakest Corella episodes, just because of the fact that it's just extremely boring, like most of the other ones I've been saying. Yeah, nothing else to it. Boring, boring. Number 86, Out to Lunch. Well, here we have another boring Corella episode, which is another odd, because Corella has some of the best episodes, and now all of a sudden we have just pretty weak episodes with Corella. I don't understand. Nah, it's just another boring episode. The pups get launched out into space, and they have to make their way back. It's pretty repetitive. I've seen this story before in other shows, so it's just Also, I think it'd be more interesting if it was Corella, Jasper, and Horace in space. I think that would make for an interesting episode. Number 85, Trick, Track, Toe. I believe that's what it's called. So in this episode, there is a dog who is afraid of bunnies. So he doesn't want to race on the racetrack anymore. But he ends up overcoming his fear, and he runs the race and wins. It's a pretty simple episode, nothing too special, and it's pretty boring, honestly. Except, of course, the Corella moments, which, of course, always end up being really funny. For the most part, even in some of the weaker episodes, they can still be pretty funny. But overall, I do think this episode is just pretty weak overall, and another one of the below average episodes. Number 84, You Slipped a Disc. Well, here is another pretty just meh Cruella episode. So Roger has made a game, and it gets kind of funny. It's basically just how he pictures Cruella, basically, but he doesn't want Cruella to see it, or something like that. I don't remember, but Cruella ends up seeing it and tries to fix it herself. I don't know, there's some pretty funny things about this episode, but at the same time, I do think it's, once again, just boring. So, nothing too amazingly interesting. It's here, though. Number 83, The Life You Saved. Well, here comes the dumpling episodes. Basically, I guess she's in love with Lucky for this episode, because Lucky saved her for something. I forget really what happened. I just remember she is just in love with Lucky. So she ends up following him around and being a pest to him. And that's basically the episode. It's just fairly boring, honestly, with some of my absolute least favorite side characters of the show, so nothing too crazy here. Number 82, Bad to the Bone. Oof, this episode is pretty bad. I can't believe I put it as my absolute second favorite episode from season 1. Heck no, this episode is garbage. So basically, it's another one of these stories where Mooch decides he wants to pick on somebody. This time it's Rolly, because he's A, very gullible, and B, just, I don't know, why the heck not? So Rolly tries to, I guess, I don't even know what you want to call it, not really stand up for himself, but also not want to be the weakling that everyone thinks he is either. So he ends up joining Mooch in the gang, and then all of a sudden at the end of the episode they kick him out. Oh, that's right, it's because he fakes being attacked by a snake, or pretends that he's the one that's, like, he's really good at hurting us. I don't even know what you want to call it. So the snake pays him back and hurts him. It's a dumb episode, and it's a horrible ending to already a bad episode, so it just makes it even worse. Number 81, Heard It Through the Grapevine. I'm getting so sick of these boring type episodes. There's so many of them. Like, a lot of the episodes are pretty boring, and a lot of them like to copy other episodes too. Like, Heard It Through the Grapevine, it's another one of those episodes where it's just Green Pug trying to, not, I shouldn't say overcome, but basically overreact about a cat invasion, because he really, really doesn't like cats. It's basically like Hal Noon, but worse and more forgettable. And that episode wasn't even the greatest to begin with. Number 80, Profit and Loss. So in this episode, everyone thinks that Cadpig can predict the future. So they all ask her, like, what's going to happen? What's this? What's that? And that's the whole episode. And it's extremely boring. So, yeah. Number 79, Move It On Over. So in this episode, the two cows are fighting, so Cadpig tries to get them back together again. And that's it. Once again, another pretty boring Cadpig episode, although I do think it's a tad more interesting than Profit and Loss, but it's still just a pretty weak one overall. And once again, like Profit and Loss, Cadpig just makes the situation just even worse. I don't know. I think it's a boring episode, so nothing else I have to say about it. Number 78, Alive and Chicken. So in this episode, Spot thinks that she's gonna die. And that's the whole plot for this episode. Oh boy, I've definitely seen episodes like this before too, in the past. And this is once again just one of the more boring type of episodes. So, seen this cliche before, so nothing else I have to say. It's just okay. Time to move on. Number 77, Mall Pups. So, for this episode, the pups go to the mall. And that's basically the episode. I feel like this episode would be better if it was just one of those random days that the pups just decided, hey, let's go to a mall. And then Green Pug was there to just be, his normal old self. But instead, they made it one of those let's sneak out of class type of episodes, and Green Pug was there to get them back. So it just made it just less funnier and just more meh. I do think there's some parts of this episode that are kind of cool, but overall, I do think it could have been better, and it still is just a little boring. Number 76, Hogtied. Hey, look, it's another dumpling episode. This time, though, instead of stalking Lucky, she wants to join in with the group. But they end up making a bunch of, silly tasks for her to complete for her to be able to join in. And obviously, it doesn't really end up working. I don't really remember. I think she does really good, but then like, so then the pups try to make it harder and harder as time goes on. So overall, I just think it's a boring episode. Another just bland one. Number 75, Swine Song. Well, for this episode, we have another dumpling episode. And it's literally just the same thing as not Hog Tired. What's the one that had her in it that she was really annoying in? The Life You Save, maybe? Whatever one that she was in it where she was basically just, or she was just basically, what is that word? I cannot think. Following around Lucky, I guess the word is, being a creep. I don't know. This time she's doing it to Rolly, and that's about the episode. It's not one of my favorites. Number 74, Two for the Show. Lucky is on a show, and he is deciding who he wants to bring along with him. And, I mean, all of his friends he has, who is he going to bring? Well, he ends up bringing Steven the crocodile instead. Okay. Once that fails, Rolly shows up to give them their win. It's not a bad episode. It is definitely still a little boring, but not as bad as the ones we've seen. Number 45, A Walk on the Wild Side. So, it's another episode focused on Swamp Rat, who is one of my absolute least favorite side characters. Just because he's just so extremely boring. This episode is basically kind of like Bad to the Bone, or at least the starting of it is, where Rolly gets bullied by Mooch. Wow, big surprise there, right? Another copy episode, and another copied one of the worst episodes. So, okay. What makes this episode different, though, is afterwards, instead of Rolly proving himself mighty and tough and wanting to join the group, he ends up going along with Swamp Rat, and they end up kind of making their own team. So, okay, it is a little more interesting. Plus, it doesn't have that terrible Rolly torture at the end of the episode, which automatically makes it a lot better. Although, it's still just an okay episode. Number 72, Howl Noon. So this is one of the first times we see Green Pug. He's definitely a interesting character in the show. He has a fear of cats. And in this episode, that is basically what it's all about. Basically, it's kind of like Heard It Through the Grapevine, but just better. It's a great introduction to Green Pug. It does get a little boring at times, but it's not a bad episode. Number 71, Animal House Party. So in this episode, the Dearlys are gone, so Swamp Rat decides to invite his friends over, and they all just take over the house. Well, here's the cliche of the thing that wouldn't leave, and sometimes it's done really well, like in SpongeBob. Other times, it gets pretty meh, like in this episode, for example. Although I do really love the backstory of Pug not liking cats in this episode. Number 70, Invasion of the Doggy Snatcher. So for this episode, the chickens think that the dogs are aliens. It's just a boring plot, and that's all there is to it. Nothing else I have to say. So, we can move right along. Number 16, Cadet of the Month. So in this episode, Lucky is trying to prove to Green Pug that he is a good cadet. But that ends up into Green Pug ending up at the dump. So they try to save him, and yeah, you basically know where the rest of the episode goes. It's not a bad one, per se. It definitely at least is interesting, and I love how Cruella is just randomly in it. But it's still not one of my absolute favorite episodes. Number 68, Four Stories Up. So, in this episode, the TV show that the pups are watching gets cut out because of Cruella. So they end up pretending to make up their own stories to figure out how the story is finished. It's a pretty interesting idea, although the story itself just can get a little meh at times because it's just the same story told by different characters. It's not a bad one, it's just one that's just okay. Number 67, Wild Chick Chase. Spot has to babysit a baby chick, and the chick is very troublesome and gets herself in a lot of trouble. So it's one of those type of episodes where where one of the characters has to babysit. The baby is usually very, what's the word? Not curious, but troublesome, I guess. So I've seen this type of episode before. It's not bad. I just think it's just okay. Number 66, Prima Doggy. So Lucky gets chosen to be in a commercial about eating dog food. The only problem is that they do so many takes that he gets super full. So Lucky quits and Spot goes in. It's not a bad episode. It's nice seeing a decent Lucky center of attention episode. Still not one of my favorites, but it's not bad either. Number 65, the Maltese Chicken. So in this episode, Spot is pretending to be a detective chicken, and she is solving the mystery of what happened to Cornelius Egg. And there's three different suspects. Corella obviously is one of them. Another one is Ed Pig, and I forget who the other one was. But of course, believe it or not, Ed Pig, of course, was the one who ended up taking the egg. I'm not even surprised. It's not a bad episode. It can be kind of interesting. I'm mainly talking about the Corella moments, but yeah, it's fine. Number 64, best of the show. It's so funny how Corella hates dogs, yet gets a dog in this episode. But obviously, for money, Corella gets a dog to win the dog show, I guess, or whatever it is. So that she can beat the Dearleys. I believe it's another one of those plus to take the farm. I don't remember. I've only seen this episode a few times. It's not a bad one. Corella's Pet is definitely meh, but it's not a bad episode. It's fine. Number 63, Cad Pig Behind Bars. So in this episode, Cad Pig goes to the pound. So Lucky, Rolly, and Green Pug have to go and save her. So it turns out to be an interesting-ish episode. Although I mainly just love the Lucky, Rolly, and Green Pug scenes. The Cad Pig scenes are just, I don't know. It's just, she's such a meh character. Like, I've seen, like, what she's done before in other episodes. Her story is literally the same as Move It On Over, Profit and Loss. But it's not as bad as those episodes for sure. And like I said, I really love the Lucky Rolly and Green Pug moments too. So the episode ain't bad. It's just fine. Number 62, Watch for Fallen Idols. Hey look, it's the second movie put into an episode. So for this episode, Thunderbolt visits the farm to do a scene for a movie. And just like the movie, he's afraid of heights. But instead of it being Patch who's the one who's surprised, it's Lucky. So, yeah, if you've seen the sequel to 101 Dalmatians, you've seen this episode. It's not bad. It's alright. Number 61, the artist formerly known as Spot. So, Spot becomes an artist for Cruella, and Cruella sells it for money. And that's how the episode goes until Spot gets tired and leaves. It's honestly not a bad episode. I do think there is some pretty interesting things about it. It's definitely one of the better Spot episodes, where a lot of the other ones are just mainly him just trying to be a chicken. Did I say him? I mean her. So, at least we have something a little more interesting this time around. It's not a bad episode. It's fine, though. It's fine. It's not that bad. I'd say we're around the era where where a lot of the episodes are about like 50-50. Like they're right in the middle. They get a C. No, I don't know how else you want to say it. Right in the middle. So yeah, nothing else I have to say. I think it's a pretty decent episode. Number 60, Film Fatal. So in this episode, I guess Cruella now all of a sudden has a movie theater. Man, she owns like everything. So the pups and Spot sneak in, and I don't remember why, and I don't remember why they just then sneak out, basically just to crash your party, I guess. I don't know. Oh wait, I think I remember now. They go in because they want to see a certain movie, but then something happens and they end up just spoiling the plan. Or I guess then they figured out it was Cruella, so they tried to foil her plan. Something like that, I think. I don't remember. It's a fine enough episode. And of course, the Cruella scenes are funny as always. Number 59, Jurassic Bark. So, the pups end up finding a prehistoric pup, and I guess Cruella does too. Once again, this is just one of these episodes I really don't remember, but I just remember thinking the episode was pretty good. There's some fun moments to be had in this episode, just like a lot of the other ones that has Cruella in it. It's a pretty decent episode. I just don't remember too much that happens in it, besides it being a pretty decent episode. Number 58, Our Own Digs. So the pups are getting a little tired of having so many brothers and sisters, so they want to have their own hangout for themselves. So they end up finding a big haystack that they, I guess, now want to hang out in. The only problem is Green Pug also found it, and he wants to hang out in there too, so he makes it his own home. And because, he's older and wiser, therefore it's his territory. Oh, great, this type of story again. But the difference is it doesn't just take over the whole episode, looking at you splishing and splashing. Instead, they actually do something with it. Plus, they have a bunch of fun Corella moments. And I love how even though Green Pug was mean to the pups, they still want to save him, obviously. They don't want him to be, killed by the tractor that's going to take up all the hay bales, which means, there goes their little secret hideout. It's a fine episode. Green Pug does get a little annoying in this one, but it's not a bad one. Number 57, Southern Fried Corella. I really don't remember what happens in this episode, except for the fact that the Dearlies go away, and Corella is all of a sudden just hanging out in the house. I don't remember, except So it's basically just the same story as Animal House Party, but it's Corella instead of Swamp Rat. Okay, that's already better because I love Corella in the show, and I think she's a way better character than Swamp Rat, and it's really funny how she's gotten like. I shouldn't say dumbed down, but she's gotten really hilarious in this show, which I really like. Basically, she's just Yzma for Emperor's New Groove now. So, hey, I'll take another Yzma. I'm not complaining. Overall, it's a decent episode. I don't remember too much about it, but yeah, it's decent. Number 56, Rolly's Excellent Adventure. So in this episode, Rolly ends up taking care of a bunch of chicks. So now they do literally everything that he does or wants them to do, which is really hilarious. So they end up getting captured by Corella. So the chicks end up helping them out of the little jail cell. It's really funny. I think it's a really sweet episode, and it's a really good one overall. I mean, it does get a little okay at times, but it's not bad. Number 54, Food for Thought. So in this episode, P.H. DeVille ends up capturing Rolly to do some tests on him, like he's been doing for a bunch of other animals. So everyone has to end up rescuing Rolly. It's a pretty decent episode, and although there isn't a lot, Rolly usually has pretty decent episodes. So this is one of the first ones that has Rolly in it. So hey, it's a pretty good episode. Number 53, Goose Pimples. So in this episode, Green Pug ends up telling the pups about a spooky story, and I guess it sort of comes real, or they're so spooked out they think it becomes real. What it really is Captain taking everyone for a horse ride. It's overall a pretty decent episode. I mean, I've seen this type of episode before in other shows, but I think it's done pretty well in this one, and it's nice seeing Green Pug back to his normal self, opposed to what he was in the episode RM Diggs. Number 52, Hail to the Chief. So in this episode, Rolly wants to be a firefighter pup. Since, Dalmatians are usually the dogs that firefighters have. So anywho, in this episode, by a complete accident, the barn ends up catching on fire. And it's funny because by complete accident, it actually was by a complete accident. Corella was smoking inside their barn, and a few ashes ended up on the hay. Oops. So it's funny how it's still Corella who causes the problem, even if it was a complete accident. It's a pretty decent episode overall. Once again, another pretty good Rolly episode. Number 51, Market Mayhem. So this episode, Nanny goes down to the supermarket and gets a bunch of and needs to get more kibble for the pups. So I love how instead of the episode focusing on just the food, it's focused on the market itself. So it's some interesting, cool new scene changes, as well as of course Corella showing popping in every once in a while, which of course automatically makes that better. Number 50, Beauty Pageant Pandemonium. So in this episode, Corella's niece is going against Anita's niece, and of course, surprise, surprise, Corella's niece wins. What, you're gonna say Anita? You thought I was gonna say Anita's niece? No, I'm joking. It was Anita's niece, of course. It's overall a decent episode, seeing both nieces kind of interact with each other. It's not a bad episode. It's fine. It's here right in the middle of the list. Number 49, Poison Ivy. Hey, I didn't know that Fiore snuck into the Dalmatian series. Okay. And what's funny is that this episode is literally just um like a compilation of how Fiore was in season 1 of Disventure Camp, which is kind of funny. Except for the fact that instead of her wanting to eliminate players, she just wanted to, I don't know, be evil for the sake of it. It's a fine enough episode. Nothing else I have to say. Number 43, Unlucky. So, Lucky has a horseshoe-shaped spots on his back. Interesting. Unfortunately, they start to disappear. And now he thinks he's unlucky. And that actually ends up happening in this episode, where there's just a bunch of unlucky things that happen to Lucky. Okay, but boiling it down, it could also just turn into another torture episode for Lucky, but I think they made it so it didn't feel torturous like Love 'Em and Flee 'Em or Conehead, but it was overall a fine enough episode. I just don't really remember it that much, that's the only thing. Number 47, Dog Food Day Afternoon. So in this episode, Cruella is taking over the dog food industry. Okay, she ends up changing the dog food so it tastes, I guess, more disgusting, and obviously that does not go well with Rolly because he's the king of food. So they end up going to expose Cruella. So that obviously boiling it down. It does kind of lead to another one of those food type episodes. But I think this one is just done a lot better, and it, of course, has a lot of funny scenes in it, where it's overall a pretty decent episode, and I would almost say it's an above average episode. I don't know if it is or isn't, but it's a good one for sure. Number 46, Home is Where the Bark Is. Man, talk about the first episode being a pretty good intro to the show. So for this episode, basically, once again, is basically just like the sequel to 101 Dalmatians. They're moving from the city into the country. And this is basically the only episode that we do get to see their old house. And, like the sequel, a few pups get left behind. The sequel was Patch, but in this show, it was obviously our main pups. It's overall a decent episode. It does get a little okay at times, but I think overall for an introduction to the series, it's a great episode. Number 45, Fungus Among Us. So, Scorch returns home to Corella's house with a fungus, and Corella loves the smell, so she's trying to get it so then she can put it into her fashion, because in this show, she makes clothes. Okay. The scent turns out to be mushrooms. So by the time that they end up getting the mushrooms, they're already rotten and they smell pretty bad. It's a pretty good episode and definitely one of the better, longer episodes. So yeah, nothing else I have to say. It's a great episode with some hilarious Corella moments. Number 44, K is for Kibble. Hey look, it's the Maltese chicken again, except way better. So in this episode, the food is mysteriously disappearing from the food tower. So everyone is trying to find out what's going on. So Spot brings back his detective uniform. It's overall much better episode than the Maltese chicken and way more interesting. It's overall a good episode. Number 25, Treasure of Swamp Island. So Corella has hidden treasure in the swamp, and she's trying to find it. She's hidden something. I forget what it is. But she's trying to go find it. And the pups also got, I guess, some sort of map as well. So they're also trying to find it. So, yeah, the swamp episodes are usually some of my least favorite. But because it has Corella in it, and because she's basically the main character in this episode, it's a great one. Number 42, Frisky Business. So in this episode, Corella is over at the Dearly's farm, and the pups end up hijacking Corella's car and want to drive it to some sort of food place. Which, of course, that ends wonderfully as they end up driving her car all over creation. Meanwhile, Roger ends up finding out and tries to keep Corella at the house as long as humanly possible so she doesn't find out that her car is missing. So that ends up being really hilarious how usually it's the complete opposite where Roger wants her to leave and now he wants her to stay. Oh, it's funny. I also love the side quest of Nanny and Horace just randomly going on their own adventure too to try to get Corella's car back. I also love how Horace is just in love with Nanny. Overall, it's a really good episode. Number 41, Valentine's Days. So it's Valentine's Day. Roger made a gift for Anita, but it accidentally ends up in Corella's house. Oh boy, this is already is hilarious. So Corella thinks that Roger has given her the Valentine. So now she's just super thankful and all Roger wants is the gift back. So once Corella finds out that it was all a misunderstanding, then she goes on a rampage and destroys a bunch of different Valentines. Um, and then at the end of the episode, all the pups end up giving Corella Valentines, which is definitely a sweet ending to a good episode. Number 40, The Dogs of DeVille. So in this episode, Roger and Anita are going to go on a picnic. But Corella wants Anita to come in for something. So Anita goes in, and it's obviously for something really silly. Although Roger and Anita end up fighting about it, and the pups get a little nervous about the fight, as well as Pongo and Perdita. So they end up following Anita, while Roger and Pongo follow close behind. It's a great episode, and I love the ending where Pongo and Perdita reassure their pups that nothing is ever going to happen to them. So it's a great episode, and of course the moments with Corella are funny as usual. Number 39, Two Faces of Anita. So Anita gets I guess a promotion or something, and Corella is jealous. So she goes as far as turning herself into Anita so she could be the one getting the prize. Ooh, okay then. Overall, though, it really does remind me of the last one I just talked about, The Dogs of DeVille, but I think this one is just done a bit better, and it's just a little more funnier. Number 40, Robo Rolly. So I feel like every show has to have some sort of robot-y type episode, and it's the same thing as most other episodes. Someone gets captured, and they get transformed into a robot. I've always found these episodes just unsettling and very uncanny at times, just because the way that the robot moves around, for starters, it looks exactly like the character who got captured. So, okay, and then it starts moving around and talking in that uncanny, unsettling way. Although I do think this is one of the best ways you could do an episode like this, just because I feel like, I don't know, the way they made it work is better than other TV shows where they try to make one of the characters a robot, which is just, I don't know, why do shows do that? It's just, like, I don't know. It's just, first off, it's it's in a lot of TV shows. And also the fact that, why do you want to see one of the main characters just basically a robot? It's just, it gets a little uncanny and unsettling at times. Not a bad episode, though. I do think this episode is pretty good, as I said, and another good Rolly episode for sure. Number 31, Nah or Never. So in this episode, Rolly is now obsessed with shoes. Okay. So he starts off by chewing up Corella's shoes, which ends on a really funny montage in the beginning of the episode. Obviously, Corella notices and tries to catch Rolly in his own trap. So Rolly ends up noticing and ends up, of course, changing. It's a great ending, and it's a great episode overall. Number 36, Lord of the Termites. So this episode is basically a episode, I don't even know what you want to call it. Basically, it is the episode of the Home Alone movie. So the house is infested by termites. So the Dearlys and literally everyone end up moving away for temporarily while they fix this termite problem. So unfortunately, they end up leaving our main characters at the farm. So they're still at the house, and basically it's like the movie Home Alone. If you've seen the movie Home Alone, you've seen this episode. So of course what's the name? The burglars are Jasper and Horace. I mean, who else would they be? Um, so we lead to a bunch of hilarious moments with them as well. I mean, the episode can get a little boring at times because I mean it is a special, so they do have to try to fit a bunch of episode. They do have to fit a bunch into this episode, but overall, I think it's a pretty decent episode and one of my favorites from the show. Number 35, Virtual Lucky. So in this episode, Corella and Lucky accidentally end up in Roger's video game. So both of them have to try to escape it together. Man, talk about a creative episode. This one is just really great. Remember how in other TV shows they have almost kind of like that dream episode? Well, this is kind of like that, except it's not a dream. Instead, it's just Corella and Lucky getting trapped together in a, I guess, video game. It's a pretty great episode, and it's fun seeing Lucky and Corella work together, which is something we normally don't ever see. So, it's a great episode for sure, and definitely one of my favorites. Number 34, Fountain of Youth. So, in this episode, Corella thinks she's looking too old. So, she tries a bunch of different hilarious ways to make herself, I guess, quote unquote, look young again. Like, drinking tap water. Okay. So she thinks that from a broken pipe, she thinks that like dogs turn into puppies, for example. So she gets obsessive over this tap water from the Dearly's farm, which is hilarious. Overall, it's a great episode, and in my opinion, one of the absolute best of the series. Number 33, The Nose Knows. So, Green Pug has grown tired of Rolly constantly failing his cadet classes. So he makes Rolly do a bunch of different like tasks and stuff to prove himself worthy. And although Rolly obviously isn't the greatest, he does have help. He does get help from his friends to help, um, so that Green Pug is like you. So Green Pug changes his mind basically. It's a pretty decent episode, although I feel bad for Rolly, but it's at least great to see a good Rolly and a Green Pug episode. One that finally isn't boring either. It's a great one overall, and it's nice seeing Green Pug finally not put down Lucky for once. I swear, every episode it's just about him um, picking on Lucky. So yeah, overall, I think it's a decent episode. Number 32, Full Metal Pullets. So in this episode, the cadet class has to, I guess, march or something. They have to do something along those lines. And, of course, the four main pups, Lucky is the one in charge, and he's constantly tired of Spot just being, I guess, Spot. And, of course, he wants to beat his rival, Tripod. You know, I think this episode is fine. I just don't really remember half of it, and the end scene definitely gives it a minus point, but I think it's overall a decent episode. It's just not one I remember much. Number 31, The Great Cat Invasion. So, Corella has a bunch of random cats in her yard for, surprise, surprise, another fashion thing. So, Green Pug finds out and tries to get rid of them, but I don't, once again, I don't remember this episode. I just remember liking it a lot. um, I, I seriously don't remember this much of this episode. I just remember liking it a lot, and I do think it's great. Being one of the better Green Pug episodes, of course. And, of course, Tripod's in it, that's great. Corella's in it, that's great. It's a good episode overall. Number 30, A Officer and a Gentle Dog. Oh, this one's another pretty good episode. Basically, Lucky and all the pups are racing in the cadet class, whatever you want to call it. And this is the first episode we get to see Tripod in. And he is really good at running and basically everything, even though he's only on 3 legs. So, okay. What I like about this episode is that even though Lucky really wants to win, he goes back and saves his friends and lets Tripod win. But yet Tripod ends up letting Green Pug know what Lucky did, so Lucky ends up winning after all. A lot of this episode does kind of remind me of Full Metal Pullets, but it's just way better. Number 29, Lucky to Be Alone. So this basically starts like our own digs, where um where someone is just super tired of everyone and wants to be all by themselves. The only difference is that this time it's only Lucky. So he ends up staying at some other Dalmatians for a bit to be by himself. And while at first has a lot of fun, as the episode goes on, he starts missing his friends and family. And I just love the sentimental to this episode. And um the emotion. It doesn't just rush through to try to get through everything. No, they really try to take their time and show that, Lucky's having fun at first, but he's really starting to miss his family. It's a sweet episode, and I do really like it, and I think it's one of the best episodes. Number 28, Spots and Shots. So I believe this is probably the very first episode of the series that I ever watched. And man, what a great one to start off with. Basically, it's simple. Lucky doesn't want a shot, so he ends up sneaking off to Corella's place where he gets tortured and figures that getting a shot ain't as bad as getting tortured. That's basically what the plot is, but honestly, they make it really fun. And of course, any scene with Corella in it is hilarious as always. And it's nice seeing that Lucky finally is like, you know what? I'm gonna get the shot, get it done and over with. It's a good episode overall, and in my opinion, one of the best of the show. Number 28, Good Neighbor Corella. Man, talk about a hilarious episode. So in this episode, Corella is tired of, I guess, being nice, so she makes P.H. DeVille split her up into a good personality, and then she can be her own evil personality. Obviously, it ends up failing, and everything ends up going back to normal. There's a lot of hilarious things that happen in this episode, and in my opinion, it's one of the best episodes of the series. Number 27, Uzi Does It. Oh boy, so Corella's making everything purple now. Okay. Unfortunately, she ends up polluting into Hiccupool, which gains the attention of the pups, and they end up stopping her. It's a pretty funny episode with some great music. I don't know why, I just always remember liking the music to this episode. It's a great one for sure, and definitely one of the best episodes of the series. Number 25, Walk a Mile in My Tracks. Cornelius and Green Pug are characters we normally don't really see interact with each other. So it's funny seeing how both of them just bumped into each other and now just all of a sudden hate each other and they both want to prove each other wrong. So now Cornelius is in charge of the pups and Green Pug is in charge of the hen house, which is kind of funny. It's funny seeing them both kind of switch roles and how everyone just wants them to go back. It's also nice seeing Tripod in this episode too. That obviously makes it better. And I think the ending is really funny too. Number 21, Shipwrecked. Oh man, this episode is hilarious. So the Dearlys are going on this, I guess, cruise, and Corella is also going as well, yet they don't realize that they're both on the same boat together. It's really funny, and I love seeing the episodes where Corella and the Dearlys are actually getting along, opposed to them just fighting the whole time. It makes for a neat change. Lucky and Scorch end up going overboard, so both of them have to try to work together in order to survive. Obviously, it goes bad for most of it until eventually they end up working together to make it back to the boat. I think it's a pretty good episode overall. It does get a little slow at times, but overall, it's a really great episode and one of my favorites of the show. Number 23, Coupe de Ville. Man, oh man, I cannot believe I put this as one of the absolute worst episodes originally. My opinion on this episode has definitely changed, as I find it one of my absolute favorite episodes of the series now. So, a town has randomly appeared out of nowhere, and everyone in this town, I guess, is just, I don't know what the word is. They just love everything, except if you're a chicken or if you're a DeVille. So, of course, it's a fun, episode. It's another one of those fun Corella DeVille type of episodes. Once again, kind of like Shipwrecked, it's nice seeing Corella actually working with the Dearlys in this episode, opposed to against them. So everyone has to get out of this town by I don't remember sundown, or else they'll get stuck in this town forever. The episode gets intense, really seeing if they're gonna make it out or not. It's a great episode overall, and of course, Corella steals the show as always. I also love how we finally get a good Spot being center of attention episode, because most of the ones before were either just pretty annoying or were just fine. But we finally get a really good Spot center of attention episode. So I love it. This is a great episode. I can't believe I put it as one of the worst originally. Number 22, Do the Right Thing. So Anita's purse ends up accidentally left in Corella's car, but flies out and the pups find it. So they try to return it back to Corella, only finding out then that it's Anita. So then the episode is them basically trying to get it back, which is really fun. It's always nice seeing the pup. It's always fun seeing the pups in Corella's house. Um, and of course, there's some fun moments with them and Jasper and Horace. And what's funny is that not once did Corella know that they were in her house. This is like one of the only episodes that ever happened. It's really unique and interesting, and I love the episode. It's a great one overall, and it's easily one of my favorites of the show. Number 21, Cupid Pups. Oh man, this episode is hilarious. So it's basically almost kind of like Valentine's Days, but just way better. So Krilla ends up having some sort of party for just a bunch of different people. I don't remember why, but the Dearlys get involved too, which is kind of nice seeing them just over at Corella. It's funny and different seeing them at Corella's place. What's nice is that once again, this is another one of those episodes where Corella ends up working with the Dearlys, which is great. And I love how we have another villain who isn't just Corella, and instead, like, Corella's the nice guy in this episode. The same thing with Coupe de Ville. So overall, this is a really great episode, and definitely one of my favorites of the series. Number 20, Every Little Crooked Nanny. So, Nanny is off, I forget where, and Corella is now the new nanny. So, it leads to, obviously, as we all know, a bunch of hilarious scenes. Um, I don't really know. There's nothing else really to say about this episode. It's a great one for sure, and definitely one of my favorites of this series, with, as usual, a bunch of hilarious Corella scenes. Number 19, Cruella World. So, basically, what would happen if Corella would take over Disney World? Well, then we would have basically the same attractions, but everything's Corella-fied, which is hilarious. There is a lot of hilarious moments of this episode, like how all the rides are Cruella-themed, how Roger and Anita are just there. I don't even know what they're doing, just trying to have a fun time. I don't know. It's just overall a really great episode, and definitely one of the best out of the series. Number 18, No Train, No Gain. Oh man, this episode is great. Basically, take the usual Corella episode, but now she's driving a train, and she's doing it to give it to a little boy just to get money. It's a great episode overall. It's your typical Corella episode, but of course the typical Corella episodes are always really great. So it's a great one for sure, and definitely top 20. Number 17, Dog's Best Friend. I know I was complaining about a lot of the side characters, but I did mention that one I didn't mind seeing was dogs. And man, this episode is really great. So, a young German Shepherd pup is staying with the Dearlys until they find his owner. It's a really sweet episode, and I really love Blaze. He's adorable, and he's a great character for sure. Definitely one of the best side characters of the show, and better than basically most of the farm animals, which is hilarious. Rolly gets a little jealous that he thinks that Blaze is playing with Lucky, opposed to, or that Lucky's playing with Blaze opposed to Rolly. So he gets jealous at first, but they both soon become friends. It's a sweet episode, and it's easily one of my favorites of the show. Number 16, Coupe de Ville. Also, by the way, I just realized I messed up a little bit. So this one is actually number 23, Coupe de Ville. So this one is number 23, and number 16 is actually DeVille Age Elder. That's what it's called, and I mixed the two up. Too many just similar names. Okay, anywho, this episode, Corella has basically a whole party with her whole family, which is really funny. And what's even funnier is that her mom looks not exactly, but her mom looks like Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove. And I'm here joking about how Corella acts like Yzma. What are the odds? Am I right? Basically, all of them come together to try to take the Dearlys farm. It's a great episode overall, and one of my favorites from the series for sure. Number 15, The Making of. Oh man, basically a behind-the-scenes episode. I've always loved the behind-the-scene type episodes of TV shows. And of course, the Dalmatian series has their own. Basically, it's like what the show would have been. And of course, yeah, it does have a few flashbacks, but luckily it's not the whole episode. I do really love the whole theme of them trying to figure out what the show is going to be about. And it's overall a really great episode overall, and easily one of my favorites of the show. And it's so good, it made top 15. Number 14, Shake, Rattle, and Wolf. Oh man, talk about a hilarious episode. Corella's putting on a show because she can hear the pups singing really loudly, so she ends up putting on a show, I guess, for them. Okay. And of course, as the show goes on, a bunch of hilarious unhinged moments end up happening, mainly due to Jasper and Horse. But hey, I'm not complaining. I'll take some hilarious Corella moments. Basically, anytime Corella's on screen, she has to have something hilarious happen to her. It's just the rules, I guess. It's a really great episode for sure, and it's definitely, of course, one of my favorites from the show. Number 13, Close But No Cigar. So in this episode, it's basically just what would happen if the cast in this show went to the fair. Well, then we have a really hilarious episode where a bunch of unhinged stuff happens once again. So so the pups are too busy watching a TV show, so they get distracted and end up missing the bus that the Dearlys are taking to go to the fair. Nanny ends up leaving her raffle ticket behind, so the pups end up trying to find a way to retrieve it back to her. Um, Now these type of episodes can usually get a little annoying, but I think the way they did it in this show worked really well. So, I mean, it's they've done it before in SpongeBob, but basically it's like they don't get to do the fun fair stuff, but at the same time they do, if you know what I mean. Overall, it's a good episode and one of my favorites of the show. Number 4, Leisure Lawsuit. So in this episode, Corella gets hurt, or I guess she doesn't really get hurt that badly, but she pretends she gets hurt really badly, so the Dearlys can wait on her hand and foot, and she can get all the attention in the world. Nah, I'm joking. But she does it just so she can make the Dearlys do everything for her, and if not, then she will file a lawsuit against them. It's a really funny episode. I love how, even though she's faking being hurt, I love how the more the episode goes on, the more hurt she gets. So it's a really great episode overall, and definitely one of my favorites of the series. Number 11, My Fair Moochie. Oh man, I love this episode. So basically, Cadpig and Mooch literally fall in love with each other. Okay, kind of funny. And like the musical My Fair Lady, Cadpig ends up teaching Mooch the ways of being good and clean and proper, and basically the complete opposite of how Mooch is. What I really love about Mooch as a character is his character development as the series goes on. He starts off as a bully, but as time goes on, he starts developing into a really great character. And since this is the last episode Mooch is in, you can kind of, I guess, say that he's kind of grown out of his bully ways and he's just friends with the other pups now. Okay, great. What's cool is that we're rooting for Mooch in this episode because he's against, I guess, some sort of wrestler dog thingy. So we obviously want him to win, and I love how literally all the animals help Mooch out when Mooch doesn't want to fight. It's funny how like complete 180 he went in this episode, but I kind of like it since I wasn't a big fan of his original personality. So I think it works really well. My only problem about this episode is Cadpig, because she randomly um, just ends up dumping Mooch at the end of the episode. Okay, then. I do think it's a sweet episode overall, and definitely one of my favorites of the series. Number 10, 9, and 8 are all three parts of the Dalmatian Vacation. And if I was ranking them all, Part 2 would be number 10, Part 3 would be number 9, and Part 1 would be number 8. Oh man, talk about a way to end the series. It's such a great episode. Not a great episode. All three of these are really great episodes. Basically, Roger and Anita are going to renew their vows. However, apparently they weren't actually married. Okay, then. So they end up going on a trip to get married. Then. And of course, surprise, surprise, Corella tags along, which is hilarious, and leads to, of course, a bunch of hilarious scenes, as always. Um, and of course, her plan to make Roger and Anita not married. So it's a it's a great finale to the Dalmatian series, and definitely makes top 10 best. And I think it's even better than the introduction to the series, which the introduction was pretty good, but man, the finale to the Dalmatian series is just amazing. So yeah, nothing else I have to say. It's a amazing 3 episode finale, and in my opinion, it's some of the best of the series. Number 31, Snow Boundaries. So in this episode, Pongo and Roger are going on a guys trip into the mountains. And of course, guess who ends up following them there? Right, I bet you'll never guess who. So, the pups end up tagging along as well, and they end up in the same area as Corella is, or they both end up getting trapped. So they have to end up, I guess, fighting together. So it's another one of those fun episodes where the Dearlys work together with Corella. Well, sort of. So there's a bunch of funny moments in this episode, of course, because obviously Corella's in it, so there's gonna be a lot of hilarious moments. And it's nice seeing the pups want to help out Corella and not just be super annoyed to help her out, but want to do it just to be nice. This is a great episode for sure, and it's definitely almost top 5. It's top 10, though, for sure. Number 6, 12 Angry Pups. So, in this episode, everyone is missing something. So, everyone just ends up blaming Mooch. Okay. Even though Mooch didn't end up stealing anything. But obviously, it's Mooch, so no one really believes him. But when they find out that it isn't Mooch, then they start guessing random animals, like a sheep randomly, and Dipstick randomly too. Okay. At the end, it ends up being Green Pug who ended up stealing everything. This is just a really silly episode, and in my opinion, one of my favorites from the show. So, yeah, nothing else I have to say. It's a great episode. Number 13, Barn Boozled. Oh man, this episode is hilarious. It's another one of those episodes where Corella basically just trying to steal the farm, but this time the game is that she has to spend 24 hours in the barn with all the animals. And if she does that, then she gets the farm. Okay then, which leads to a really hilarious Corella episode, as a lot of them are. And of course, this episode really kind of reminds me of Southern Fried Corella in a way too, although this one is definitely a lot better. And in the end, obviously, Corella ends up running out before the time is up, which first we have a funny montage of her doing so. It's a great episode and definitely one of my favorites from the series. Number 4, Smoke Detectors. So in this episode, Corella's trying to quit smoking because I guess apparently she caught something in her house on fire, so she had to stay with the Dearlys, and the Dearlys are trying to help her quit smoking. It's a great episode overall. It's a really hilarious one with a bunch of, as usual, hilarious Corella moments, and it's fun. It's funny seeing her it's funny seeing Corella try not to smoke, although we all know she wants to smoke. So I mean, she is trying to quit though, which I guess it's nice. But then by the midway point, she she goes back to wanting a cigarette. It's a great episode overall. It's a hilarious one. Definitely one of my favorites of the series. Obviously, the ending is hilarious too, where Corella thinks she's a dog due to a videotape. This one is a hilarious episode. Definitely one of my favorites. Number 3, A Christmas Cruella. Oh man, this episode is hilariously funny. And of course, it's a really great episode as well. So, it's basically just a Christmas Carol, but with the 101 Dalmatian cast. And of course, Corella playing Scrooge is just perfect and matches perfectly. And I love how, once again, she's just the main character. And man, she is really the main character of this episode. And it's funny because this is one of the only times that Corella is actually like a main character. It's an amazing episode for sure, and it's easily, for sure, one of the absolute best episodes of the series. Now, one episode that I actually did forget to add, and it's in the show, but I just didn't add it on the list. It's called Triple Dog Dare, I think it is, and it's a really good episode, but I just completely forgot to add it on the list for some reason. I don't know why, but basically, Lucky and Spot have to take Corella's sleeping mask, which ends up to her house being flooded. It's a hilarious episode. That episode's really great, and that would probably make it into at least top 20. But yeah, Christmas Cruella is another amazing episode as well. So now let's move on. Number 2, Lucky All-Star. So in this episode, Roger wants to take Lucky to the, I guess, hole digging competition thing. But Roger ends up finding out that Tripod is even better at digging holes, so Roger takes Tripod instead. Now, Tripod is a really great character, and he's easily one of my favorite characters in the show, and he's just such a what's the word? He's just such an interesting character, so it's nice seeing episodes that he's in, because he is kind of like that rival to Lucky, but at the same time, they can both be good friends and help each other out. Obviously, what makes Tripod an interesting character is that, he's only on three paws, so he is kind of handicapped. But he's still really great at a lot of different things. But there's only certain things that three-legged dogs can do. So even when Tripod is ready to give up, it's nice seeing Lucky stand up to it and help Tripod out. And thanks to Lucky cheering on Tripod ends up winning. It's a very sweet episode, and it's easily, in my opinion, my second favorite episode of the series. And number one is You Say It's Your Birthday. Oh man, this episode is just so great. I remember this was my favorite back 4 years ago when I ranked every episode, and my opinions are exactly the same. Basically, it's an episode where it's the pup's, I guess, anniversary or birthday. I mean, the title says it all. However, Lucky and the main pups end up thinking that they might be getting replaced. So they keep trying to sneak around to try to figure out what's going on. And meanwhile, Corella thinks that Anita is working for her arch nemesis, which is kind of funny. Okay. Um, and obviously, I love how both storylines are the same yet different. But all of these, I guess, designs are for the actual pups, which Corella doesn't know until the very end. So she goes as far as to dressing up as a clown and ends up embarking on the birthday thing. Okay. I just think it's a very, hilarious. I don't even know what you want to call it. A very hilarious ending to a very hilarious episode. And once again, it's fun seeing Cruella just be super hilarious and interact with the pups when obviously we're like, no, don't interact with the pups because we know what's going to happen. It's fun how she's this way in the show where, I shouldn't say she's nice, but she's definitely more, what's the word? The Dearleys ain't gonna mind having her around the pups as much as the movie. So obviously they end up finding out that the clown is Cruella, and Cruella admits everything. It's a great episode for sure. It's an amazing one, and in my opinion, I think it's my favorite from the 101 Dalmatians, the series. Oh man, this video took a long time to make. Like a long time. It took about 4 hours to make. But I really did want to remake the Dalmatian series just because it's a great show and it's one that, it's the first ranking. That's basically the first ranking show that I ever did, and I felt like it was time to remaster it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, and I will see you guys next time. So, peace out.